When I was just a tender 5 or 6 years old, my family found itself embroiled in a nightmarish relocation to a distant province. Desperate and homeless, we sought refuge in a sinister shelter whose location remains a shadowy mystery to this day. The shelter whispered of grim secrets, tales that echoed through the decades, painting a chilling picture of its dark past. This eerie abode had once been an institution, or so we were told. Decades before I drew my first breath, it had been abandoned, left to fester in the annals of time until someone, or something, decided to repurpose it into a shelter for the desperate and downtrodden. Our room in that malevolent place was nothing short of a chamber of horrors, a cramped space measuring a mere 8 by 9 feet. It imprisoned us within its suffocating grasp. The door, a monstrous slab of heavy metal, groaned ominously when it swung shut, sealing us away from the world outside. 2 rickety bunk beds stood sentinel on opposite sides of the room, their skeletal frames emitting a cacophony of eerie creaks and groans, as though they harbored the souls of the damned. The mattresses were unforgiving, unfriendly to slumber, and the floor beneath our feet was nothing more than unyielding, frigid concrete. Despair gnawed at our hearts as we realized there was not even a minuscule window to offer a glimmer of solace. We huddled in that room like prisoners awaiting our fate, resigned to our grim circumstances. Yet, we dared not utter a word of complaint, for we knew this was but a temporary purgatory. We were not alone, for within the shadows of that wretched floor, we shared our solitude with unseen horrors. I can still see it clearly, in my mind's eye, my siblings and my mother, silhouetted against the flickering candlelight, toiling in the sinister kitchen. It was their turn to prepare sustenance for the shelter's denizens, a macabre part of the agreement that bound us to this unholy place. A legion of 40 other souls, lost in the labyrinthine halls of the shelter, haunted its multiple floors and a sinister basement, their presence an ever-present reminder of the malevolence that lurked within those decaying walls. As the shadows danced eerily around the room, I remembered the dread that nestled in my stomach. The day had been long, and exhaustion had claimed me early. My mother, with a solemn expression, opened the creaking, heavy door, allowing me into the room. The ominous darkness beyond the threshold seemed to swallow me whole. She flicked the light on, illuminating the room just enough for me to see the ladder leading to the upper bunk. Her voice, tinged with an unnatural edge, bid me good night as I began my ascent. I reached the top bunk, shivers crawling down my spine, and snuggled into the blankets, trying to banish the mounting unease. Little did I know, the night was about to take a sinister turn. As sleep eluded me, I found myself staring at the ceiling, my mind restless. An oppressive silence settled over the room, broken only by the occasional creaks and groans of the old house. Then, an eerie sound pierced the stillness. The bunk bed on the other side of the room, where my older brother slept, emitted a spine-chilling creak. My heart pounded as I imagined someone or something climbing the ladder on that bunk bed. Mirroring my own ascent, I called out, assuming it was my older brother, Aiden playing a prank, or simply returning late to the room without waking me. "Hey, Aiden." "You didn't have to sneak in," I said, my voice quivering in the ominous silence, my words a futile attempt to break the eerie spell that had gripped the room. But there was no response, only the rustling of sheets, the very air seeming to hold its breath in malevolent anticipation. Growing more uneasy, I tried again, raising my voice in a feeble attempt to pierce the sinister silence. "Hi, Aiden. Did you guys finish the food yet?" Dread tightened its grip on my heart as the seconds ticked by, the oppressive quiet engulfing me like a suffocating shroud. Anxious thoughts swirled in my mind, and I summoned the courage to sit up, my gaze fixed on the bed across from me. My pulse quickened as I whispered his name, terror washing over me as the truth dawned. It wasn't my brother. Something dark and malevolent lurked in the shadows, concealed in the folds of the bed. In the eerie depths of the night, a sinister silhouette emerged, embodying the form of a young girl around my tender age at that time. Her ominous presence was veiled in darkness, two braids cascading down her ethereal figure, donned in a disheveled and antiquated puffy dress. A palpable dread gripped my heart as her vacant eyes fixated on me, pointing an accusing finger in my direction. I was paralyzed by fear, unable to let out a scream for fear that it would invite harm upon me. Trembling, I sought refuge beneath my blankets, hoping the shadows would shield me from this malevolent entity. Time dragged on, the silence amplifying the terror that gnawed at my soul. Hours later, my mother entered the room, accompanied by my siblings, flicking on the light that pierced the darkness. Relieved by the sudden light, I scrambled out from my hiding place and rushed to embrace my mother, clinging to her for dear life. Her concern was evident as she inquired about the cause of my distress, my entire body still shaking from the encounter. In my mind, I believed that the spectral girl still lingered within the room, biding her time in the shadows. I recounted the harrowing tale during our morning walk, detailing the sleepless night and the eerie presence that had haunted me. I spoke of the ghostly sounds that echoed through the bunk beds, presuming it was my older brother. But what sent shivers down our spines was the revelation that the girl with braids and a puffy dress, a pitch black specter, was no figment of imagination. My mother's face twisted into a mask of horror, and she decided to discreetly inquire around the shelter, unraveling a tale that chilled us to the bone. In the depths of a chilling tale, there existed a lady named Courtney, a harbinger of the supernatural, her words dripping with an eerie truth. Yes, there is a spirit roaming, she confessed to my mother in hushed tones. It takes the form of a girl with two braids and an old-fashioned dress. She used to visit me every night, but suddenly stopped when you guys moved in. The air turned cold and heavy as the weight of Courtney's revelation settled upon us. We, the lone children in the shelter, could feel the hairs on our necks rise. What dark secrets did the shelter hold that drew this spectral entity? My mother, taken aback, stammered, "Well, my daughter has seen someone with the exact description you provided." At first, I dismissed it as her imagination or something like that. Courtney retreated into the shadows, leaving us in an unsettling silence. Yet, the silence was a mere prelude to the horror that would follow. Strange occurrences gnawed at our sanity. Phantom movements glimpsed in the periphery, the unnerving sound of knives being sharpened in an empty kitchen, and the distant cries echoing from the basement when all were above. One fateful day, our family dared to venture into the enigmatic basement. The room was transformed into a facsimile of comfort. Kids' toys scattered, colorful maps adorning the walls, wooden floors with a haunting hush, and the television casting eerie, flickering light. As we innocently watched the land before time, curiosity got the better of me, drawing my gaze to the darkness that lurked. In that dim abyss she materialized, sinister and solemn, the spirit with two braids and an antiquated dress. Standing amidst the shadows, her eyes bore into my soul. Panic surged through me as she darted around the corner, the basement forming an L-shaped trap. The feeling of being ensnared in the claws of something beyond the mortal realm sent shivers down my spine. For this was no ordinary haunting. This was a terrifying dance with the unknown. In the eerie shadows of that dim-lit room, curiosity battled with fear inside my young heart. The air felt charged with an otherworldly presence, and I found myself more drawn to the mysterious little girl than paralyzed by terror. She beckoned to me from the toy section, her figure an unsettling silhouette against the darkness. As if in the clutches of a strange game, I stood up without a word, compelled to follow her. My mother, puzzled and concerned, inquired about my destination, but I gave no reply. The dark side of the room seemed to whisper secrets, and despite my childhood dread of the dark, I ventured deeper into the basement shadows. Intrigued, my mother hesitantly trailed after me, puzzled by my unusual behavior. I made my way to a foreboding closet, and desperation overtook me as I frantically searched within. I called out repeatedly, my voice echoing through the eerie silence. "Where are you? Don't you want to play with me? Is that why you keep running around me?" My mother, growing increasingly alarmed, flicked on the lights and swiftly lifted me from the sinister closet. The TV's pale glow was extinguished, and she hurriedly ushered me and my siblings upstairs. Fear and confusion mingled in her eyes as she questioned my actions. I muttered chillingly, "She wants to play." Inexplicably, scratches and unexplained bruises began to manifest on my mother and the rest of my family. Within a week, my mother, sensing an ominous force at play, found a new place for us to dwell. We abandoned our possessions, fearing the malevolent spirit had latched onto them, carrying only essential items as we hastily relocated to the other side of town, desperate to escape the clutches of a lurking horror. A few years ago, I was but a hapless trainee in a local supermarket, oblivious to the harrowing events that would soon unfold. Darkness blanketed the late November morning as I embarked on my lonely bike ride to the early shift, the clock ominously striking 6. The chilling hours of dawn concealed the world's horrors, waiting patiently to reveal their malevolent secrets. Pedaling through the desolate streets, I felt an unsettling heaviness in the air, a premonition of something dreadful approaching. Suddenly, I made a fateful turn to the right, the world around me transforming into a realm of terror. Piercing through the silent darkness, an anguished scream clawed at my ears. It was a sound that resembled humanity, yet twisted into something grotesque, unnatural, not a mere feline quarrel. I knew that for certain, having spent a lifetime with cats. Fear paralyzed me as an unsettling dread seeped into my bones. Hastening my pace, I desperately sought escape from that accursed place, yearning for the safety of familiarity. The path ahead seemed calm, but I couldn't shake the feeling that malevolent eyes watched from the shadows, biding their time until the next encounter. The horror had only just begun. In the darkness of the night, a looming bridge stood as a portal to the macabre. It was the route I had to take to reach the desolate street where the accursed shop I toiled in was nestled. The bridge was a grotesque entity, shrouded in shadows and burdened with a weighty presence. Yet, it was a path I had grown accustomed to, an eerie familiarity that had dulled my senses to its true nature. As I traversed the abyss beneath the bridge, an unsettling hush descended upon the air. The ominous silence seemed to breathe life into my fears, but I brushed them off, suppressing the mounting dread clawing at my psyche. I convinced myself it was a mere figment of my imagination, a product of the eerie surroundings. But then, as I emerged from the other side, the stillness shattered like glass, replaced by a blood-curdling scream that pierced the night. My heart pounded, and the frigid touch of terror slithered through my veins. I halted, frozen by an invisible grip of horror, as the shriek echoed closer, now directly behind me. A primal instinct urged me to flee, to escape the clutches of an unseen terror. I turned my gaze towards the abyss I had just crossed, and there it was, a grotesque shadow, a distorted semblance of a human, lurking and tormenting. It defied comprehension, a twisted form that defied the laws of nature. The screams intensified, tearing through the night, assaulting my senses and sanity. 3 more agonizing cries reverberated through the air until my trembling resolve propelled me to flee further. The screams ceased, swallowed by the night, leaving behind a haunting emptiness. But the memory clung to my soul like a vengeful specter, haunting my every waking moment. Each drive to the accursed shop rekindled the chilling terror, for the path remained unchanged except for those few parts that harbored the unseen malevolence. The bridge remained, a silent witness to the horrors lurking in the shadows.